Coming up on this special edition of VCU InSight, we're taking a look at both sides in the debate over medical aid in dying or physician-assisted death in Virginia.
I know the stories, I know the truth. I know that women that look like me and other women, we're not just numbers.
Next, how one freshman delegate is sharing her personal story and loss of her son as a way to raise awareness about the abnormally high maternal and infant mortality rate amongst Black women in the Commonwealth.
And a look at what social services are available to incarcerated pregnant women suffering from drug use disorder. It's all a part of the fight against the opioid epidemic. VCU InSight starts now. Hello and welcome to VCU InSight. My name is Nia McMillan.
And I'm Chelsea Brooks-Giles.
This is part of our special edition show.
We will be featuring the in-depth stories VCU InSight and Capitol News Service reporters have been working on all semester as part of the newsroom at VCU. Let's get right to it.
The debate in Virginia continues over a controversial bill that could allow people who are terminally ill to decide when they want to die.
The Virginia General Assembly pushed the medical aid in dying bill to next year's session, which means discussion will continue. I talked to both sides about how they believe medical aid in dying could impact Virginians.
A great family guy, he wasn't someone who was living to work.
George Michael Vasiloff was a Marine with a passion for music.
He actually ended up playing in the Marine band instead of going to Vietnam. So he was a prolific musician. He played saxophone and clarinet and passed on, his love of music to me.
But in 2013, George was diagnosed with ALS, a fatal type of motor neuron disease that attacks the muscles and nerves. Within a few months, the Northern Virginia resident, Kate Vasiloff, says her dad's condition had quickly worsened, drastically impacting his daily life.
By the spring, he was in a wheelchair completely. By, June, he was having trouble breathing.
Vasiloff says she and her father had one conversation about medical aid in dying. She says although her father had changed his mind about his do not resuscitate order, he still talked about having a choice in when he should die. She says mostly he was worried about his children.
Terrified that what this would do to our family and what my brother and I would have to watch him go through. What I was saying, I didn't know what to do, but I knew in the moment I wanted to give him any slice of peace I possibly could.
Medical aid in dying is not legal in the state of Virginia. Vasiloff believes her father should have had a choice.
Why don't we give people the autonomy to make decisions about their own body when their body is failing them?
George Vasiloff died 18 months after the ALS diagnosis. Virginia Senator Ghazala Hashmi has tried to get the medical aid in dying bill passed for 3 years. Hashmi says she introduced the bill because of the stories of her constituents.
I've heard from many people who say that they've lived in Virginia their entire lives. They want to die in Virginia, and they want to be able to have ownership over their final decisions in that regard.
Now, there are many different arguments as to why this bill should or should not be passed. For people on both sides of the issue, they say it's about respecting human lives. Dr. Sharon Quick, the current president of the Physicians for Compassionate Care Education Foundation, testified against this bill. She says it violates patient autonomy and can lead to elder abuse.
There's also the part of autonomy that is the capacity to choose. You not only have a right to choose, but you have to have a capacity to choose. The right to choose has limits, and when it involves devaluing a person and killing a person, those are the foundational rights for autonomy, and you can't take away those or you've actually destroyed autonomy.
Rami Belsky, an end-of-life doula, says that respecting bodily autonomy is respecting the person's choice.
At the end of life, you see so much of a human's options and autonomy being taken away. They're losing control over pretty much every aspect of their life, their control, their body. And I think that being able to say, you still have a choice in how long you want to live and how long you want to travel down this road. You get to choose at some point if you've had enough. and we can do this in a really gentle and beautiful way.
Several European countries, Canada, and parts of Australia provide medical aid in dying for people with unbearable suffering who meet specific criteria. Currently, 10 U.S. states and Washington, D.C. have legalized medical aid in dying for terminally ill patients who have 6 months or less to live. Although medical aid in dying is only available for people with terminal illnesses in the United States, some question if other countries' policies will influence the U.S. to expand the service's availability. Jeff Caruso, the executive director of the Virginia Catholic Conference, says the government has an obligation to prevent suicide.
If we look at those with disabilities, those with mental illnesses, those that do not have access to high-quality health care, and the elderly, these are all populations that would be at heightened risk if assisted suicide were to become part of Virginia law.
The argument of whether medical professionals' personal beliefs should overrule the rights and wishes of patients is ongoing. According to a survey done by the American Nurses Association, 57% of over 2,300 nurses support medical aid in dying as a professional, while only 49% support it personally. An opinion found on the American Medical Association website says medically assisted death is, quote, fundamentally incompatible with the physician's role as healers. Both sides argue that they are supporting their patients in the best way possible. Regardless of the debate, families like Kate's would rather not have to make this decision at all.
That was enough for me to take up this cause and realize there's so many families going through this. I want it to be an option for those, who are faced with this really, really horrible situation.
For VCU InSight in the newsroom at VCU, I'm Chelsea Brooks-Giles. I worked with CNS digital reporter Shelby Warren on the story. Her article gave some more details on this topic. Shelby, what was the first state to legalize physician-assisted death?
Oregon was the first to legalize the procedure in 1997. According to Oregon Health data, last year, 367 terminally ill patients used the prescribed medication. Based on my data analysis, in the past 25 years, over 2,700 patients have made this choice. That is an over 2,000% increase since 1998.
Thank you, Shelby. This year was the first Black Maternal Health Week in Virginia.
But for one freshman delegate, it's a personal issue that she wants to bring to the forefront every day of the year. I spoke to Delegate Destiny LaVere Bowling and to experts about the risk factors Black women face.
Oh, I'm going on the stage.
It's Delegate Destiny LaVere Bowling's first session in the Virginia General Assembly representing the 80th District. She says she knows her elected position gives her a platform, and although she's passionate about many issues, one particular topic hits home: the high maternal and infant mortality rate in the Black community.
Talking about real lives who just want to grow their family and are dying because they want to grow their family.
It's a topic she has experienced firsthand.
So that's his little handprint, and it's so cute. I think so, anyway.
She lost her son Noah last year.
Actually having labor contractions and labor pains and didn't know. I was going to events. This was during campaign season.
Bowling says she had difficulty getting in contact with her OBGYN's office.
Just unbearable, but it got to the point where I went to the bathroom and my water broke. I felt constipated, but my water actually broke and had to be rushed to the hospital.
Noah was born at 19 weeks old and was stillborn.
I'm Noah Gabriel Bowling. He was born on August 26th at 11 p.m. exactly. Slid on out.
Although her time with him was brief, she says she still remembers all the little things about him.
He had in his little hat, which he couldn't even really fit in this diaper. It was a little big on him. But it was cute. It was cute.
According to the March of Dimes, in 2019 to 2021, the Black infant mortality rate in Virginia was the highest amongst Black women compared to other ethnicities. And the maternal mortality rate is also just as disturbingly high. Nationwide, Black women are up to 3 times as more likely to die during childbirth. However, that number can be higher or lower depending on where you're from.
For some patients, that in some areas in really rural places, that can be as high as 6 times their counterparts. So really having some appreciation for having access to care and having access to good care, so that we are not dismissing the fact that some women are really at risk.
I sat down with Dr. Tashima Lambert-Giles and asked what are some of the causes.
So when we talk about the actual reasons for maternal death, we talk about hypertensive disorders from a Black maternal death standpoint, but then we also talk about things like hemorrhage, and we talk about things like sepsis.
Could these deaths be preventable?
Oh man, the CDC did a study on that and said 80% of our maternal deaths are preventable. 80%, that is a huge number. And that is exactly why this is a big deal and why we're talking about this in the first place. Because if 80% of the deaths that we are seeing are preventable deaths, that means that there is a lot that we can do for this process.
There are doctors who believe Black women have a higher pain tolerance than any other racial group, which isn't true. This is something that doula and founder of Birth in Color RVA, Kenda Sutton L., says has been ingrained in history.
Black people have never been treated fairly in the healthcare system. So a system that hasn't been designed for us, that was never really to help us or to help us become healthy, we're still in that same system.
According to advocates, in order to counter this belief, studies have been conducted showing that many Black women's concerns are not being heard by medical providers. This type of action is deadly, which is why Sutton L. says it's important for Black families to have advocates on their side through the entire pregnancy.
It's extremely important, right? So you have someone in the room that looks just like you, so you don't feel threatened or anything. You have someone who's educating you and your partner. We don't take the place of a partner, we empower both.
Pregnancy can be a happy but stressful time for many women, but Dr. Lambert-Giles says Black women face an extra hurdle.
The Black community is already oppressed in so many other ways that before pregnancy, they are just having so much that's coming onto this plate. I think that trauma outside of pregnancy kind of just adds to that, right?
I know the stories. I know the truth. I know that women that look like me and other women, we're not just numbers. It's not just words, black and white on a paper. Real lives. And we can change and affect real lives every day.
Bowling says with her position at the state legislature, she's hoping to affect change.
So I'm prepared to fight, and it's not an issue that I'm going to give up on. It's not an issue that one piece of legislation is going to fix. There's a lot of systemic things that we have to dig into, and maybe we might not be the place to solve all of the systemic issues, but we're for sure the place to start.
Reporting for VCU InSight and the newsroom at VCU News, I'm Nia McMillan. I worked with CNS digital reporter Taya Coates on this story. She's here to share more about it. Taya, what efforts have been made to curb the Black maternal mortality rate in the Commonwealth?
So Virginia just celebrated their first official Black Maternal Health Week, and the state health team is currently studying the differences in maternal outcomes for pregnant women. Nonprofits are also working on this issue to increase support services across the state, even in prison births. And most recently, the General Assembly passed legislation to support doula services and increase research. So Nia, this is going to be a long-term effort with a lot of support needed from the state, but I'm so glad to see that we're headed down that path.
Thank you so much, Taya.
Thank you.
The opioid epidemic continues to tear through Virginia. InSight reporter Jimmy Sidney is taking a look at how pregnant women in jail are trying to get away from substance use disorder and what resources are there for them.
These women are currently incarcerated at Henrico County Jail. Denisha Elliott, Santaray Smith, Heather Bushman, and Bobby Joe Lashaway are just a few of the thousands of women in the U.S. experiencing pregnancy from behind bars.
It's really different. I've had a baby here before, so when I had a baby then, back in 18, I think it was, they didn't have doulas, or like you couldn't have anyone in the room with you, so you don't have like emotional or really physical support besides the CO. And
a doula is a woman who provides pregnant women with informational and emotional support before, during, and after childbirth. According to some studies, between 12,000 and 55,000 pregnant women are incarcerated each year. But according to the Marshall Project, government agencies don't even keep track of that number. Agencies also fail to keep track of the amount of incarcerated people who have substance use disorders. The National Institute of Drug Abuse estimates that 65% of incarcerated individuals have or are dealing with substance use disorder. Smith and Bushman both experienced substance use disorders before and during their pregnancies. Many women don't even know they're pregnant when they are being sentenced. Henrico County Jail is one of the few corrections facilities in the U.S. with social services specifically for incarcerated pregnant women. Captain Pamela Dismukes is a co-founder of the program. Activities include parental yoga, teaching about nutrition, and even support at birth.
We set them up with a doula, so when they go to the hospital to have the baby, they're their support system. They're there with them through the entire time, telling them what is going on, what's happening, what to expect.
Social service programs accessible to incarcerated pregnant women have become increasingly important, especially as the entire state of Virginia grapples with the opioid epidemic. Both law enforcement and advocate groups say that one of many areas to improve on is support services for incarcerated mothers who are dealing with drug use disorder. Carly Clements has been struggling with drug use disorder since high school. During her second pregnancy, she was incarcerated. She gave birth shackled to a hospital bed. Per Virginia law, she only got to spend 3 days with her daughter before being separated.
I had my baby, and she was healthy, but she did go through withdrawal for 30 days. You know, there's nothing worse than watching your baby go through something like that, something that you know what it feels like because you've been through it a million times.
Clements says that she had gone to various rehab programs, but says the HARP program at Chesterfield County Jail is the only one that has worked.
Like I've said, I've been to a lot of rehabs, and I've never given it 100% because you can be lazy at these rehabs because they really don't care. It's a money thing, you know? These people here, they actually care. They're not getting anything out of this but helping people.
Chesterfield County Sheriff Carl Leonard began noticing a sharp uptick in inmates with substance use disorder in 2015.
You get clean and sober, we release you when your time is up, send you back into the community, we think we did good, right? But in reality, we did nothing.
The Helping Addicts Recover Progressively program, or HARP, is a multifaceted voluntary program for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people dealing with substance use disorder.
We got to give everybody, we've had 3,000 people through the program now, we've had to give 3,000 different variations of HARP to get everybody to the final point we want, long-term recovery.
HARP provides participants with dozens of approaches to rehabilitation. Methods include peer-to-peer counseling, trauma therapy, physical therapy, and even making TikTok videos to aid in the recovery process. Chesterfield jail inmate Victoria Volk is involved with the HARP program. She has substance use disorders while being a mother. Her sentence is coming to an end, and she's coming out of the HARP program. Volk plans on working with other people going through recovery.
You know, I've been at the worst of it. I was found. They thought I was dead in a hotel room, and I was brought back to life and didn't even know it. And but this is going to be my new career.
I rob, I am loved. I am loved. Side of the eye, I am enough.
I am enough. One of the methods of physical therapy being used by HARP is called tapping. Tapping is a method of emotional regulation in which the user taps certain pressure points on their body to relieve stress. You may have seen videos of HARP participants tapping going viral on TikTok.
And it brought out the emotions, and then we were able to kind of put it, after we were done tapping, we put a lid back on the box and put it away for another time.
Both Clements and Volks experienced childhood trauma which influenced their substance use disorder. Jason Pritchard is a peer recovery specialist for Savita Health, a chain of clinics that treat people suffering from addiction, particularly in Virginia and Tennessee. Jason specializes in areas with higher poverty and where labor injuries lead to opioid prescriptions.
So they kind of build on top of each other. So you have poverty, then you have trauma, then you have ACEs, then you have mental health, then you have addiction. And so it's just a compounding problem.
For many inmates, a big part of the recovery process includes being open about their story.
Well, since I've just gotten here, this is literally the first time I've ever even said that story, but I'm able to say that without crying and feeling bad and feeling like it is my fault now. Like, this is literally my first time telling this story, so it has helped.
For VCU InSight and the newsroom at VCU, my name is Jimmy Sidney.
Jimmy worked with CNS digital reporter Alyssa Hutton on this story.
Alyssa, is there any state money to help fund some of these programs?
So the Opioid Abatement Authority distributes money from pharmaceutical settlements. Virginia is set to receive over $1 billion through 2039. This money will be used toward many initiatives, including providing Narcan, which is the medicine used to reverse an opioid overdose for health departments, and investing in recovering homes. Unfortunately, the HART program at Chesterfield is unable to receive these funds because the program predates the OAA's creation. This is something Sheriff Leonard strongly disagrees with.
Thank you. This concludes part 1 of our special edition show. Stay tuned for part 2. We're taking a look at the mixed feelings over the Capital One Arena deal and reaction over the governor's veto of the marijuana retail market.
Plus how our preteens are dealing with the ups and downs of technology and much more. For VCU InSight, I'm Chelsea Brooks-Giles.
And I'm Nia McMillan. Stay tuned for more.
Coming up on VCU InSight, a look at Generation Alpha, children born after 2010. VCU InSight goes back to school to learn about the effects technology has had on these children.
Next, the multi-million-dollar plan to bring professional sports to Virginia came down to the wire. But in the end, the Caps and Wizards are staying in DC. We have reaction and take a look at what happens next.
And the race to create a legal marijuana retail market suffers another setback at the General Assembly. This special edition of VCU InSight starts now.
Welcome back to VCU InSight. My name is Matt Bowman.
And I'm Carly Woodcock. This is part 2 of our special edition show.
We've got 4 more great stories brought to you by the newsroom at VCU reporters.
So let's jump right into it.
School counselors and pediatricians continue to monitor the high use of technology among children.
One group they're paying particular attention to is Generation Alpha, children born between 2010 and 2024. I spoke to students at Bailey Bridge Middle School in Chesterfield County to learn more about what it's like to grow up entirely online.
Walk into almost any classroom, and the use of technology is prevalent. Chromebooks and smartboards are used daily, and that's on top of using things like cell phones and Apple Watches at home. 11-year-old Talia says her peers spend a lot of time scrolling on their cell phone.
A lot of people don't want to they don't want to read, they don't want to go outside and hang out.
Talia says her parents won't let her have social media. Instead, she loves to read and wants to become a special education teacher when she grows up.
Oh, I love reading. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Cameron, also in 6th grade, admits he spends his weekends playing video games, sometimes for hours, but
I still go outside. I'm not one of those kids that don't touch the grass.
6th grader Teddy says she likes to FaceTime her friends and does go on YouTube. She says it can be challenging to limit her screen time.
We should probably be getting outside more activities because we kind of just get glued to our phones and stuff. But I try to go outside and have a balanced diet between phone and outside real world, but sometimes it's hard.
Eddie also says she struggles with comparing herself with influencers she sees online.
My mom keeps telling me, she says, you're your own person, don't try to be anyone else other than you. But sometimes it's just hard seeing all those people, influencers and stuff, because it looks like they're having a perfect life, but you don't know what's going on after behind the cameras.
Laptops, iPads, AirPods, Apple Watches, and of course, iPhones. Generation Alpha quite literally has the world at their fingertips. And according to a study done by Pew Research Center, majority of teens are using sites like YouTube and TikTok every day, and some report using these sites constantly. Experts say that technology can actually be so addicting that it can alter brains that are still developing.
Dr. Mudit Kumar is a child and adolescent psychiatrist.
And there is so much stimulation going on, so there's a lot of what we call dopamine release. So instant gratification in a way is a release of dopamine.
This year, Senator Schuyler Van Valkenburg introduced a bill prohibiting social media companies from using addictive algorithms for those under 18 without parental consent. This bill would address the issue of companies encouraging endless scrolling via algorithms designed to capture attention. As a parent, the state senator recognizes the struggle with technology, specifically social media.
It is important to set boundaries about when to use it, when not to use it. I've certainly not been perfect on that with my own kids, but around use at, say, the dinner table, or use around it when you're talking about getting your homework done, or things like that. And that's going to be different for every kid.
The addictive feed bill was delayed until 2025 to give policymakers time to study it. Dr. Kumar says the addictive algorithm is a real thing.
It's similar to, you going to Vegas and playing on slot machines. You are getting that variable reinforcement learning. And it's kind of the same on the social media apps and a lot of these algorithms.
At the same time, Dr. Kumar says there are many benefits to technology, such as different creative outlets for artists, or even the ability to find online communities of like-minded people. He also says that technology is not going anywhere, and we have to find a new balance in the digital age.
Societies like AAP, which is the American Academy of Pediatrics, to limit it to less than 1 hour a day. And there should be no screen time before 18 months to 2 years. And after that, limiting it to 1 hour a day and not more than that. So I think there are a lot of these recommendations that are based in science. But I think the issue is this lack of awareness.
Teddy says technology is all Generation Alpha knows.
I think, to everyone who thinks we're being on our phones too much, it's not our fault, technically. It's raising us with technology. It's just hard to grow up with something that everyone else has, and you don't have it.
Dr. Kumar says a big help for parents is tracking your child's screen time.
Another advice I would recommend parents, it's just to learn, just be their partner in this, and then we all figure it out together.
Reporting in Chesterfield for VCU InSight and the newsroom at VCU, I'm Carly Woodcock.
Digital reporter Ty Wilson worked on this story with me. Ty, you uncovered some statistics that spoke to this generation's struggle with mental health. Will you share a little bit more about that with us?
Yeah, Carly. So I did find that in a 2023 study of Virginia schools, middle school students are currently going through struggles with depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. In the survey, they asked the students how they have felt in the last 2 weeks, and over 20% of students reported experiencing depression and anxiety, and 11% of students reported seriously considering suicide. This parallels national data that students are becoming less satisfied with themselves. Child psychiatrists encourage parents to learn more about technology and be a part of the learning process for children and be aware of their own usage.
Wow, thank you for sharing that with us, Ty. The collapse of the multi-million-dollar Capital One Arena deal left residents in both D.C. and Alexandria with mixed feelings on the outcome.
This deal means the Wizards and Caps will no longer leave and will stay in D.C. for the next 25 years. I have been following the twists and turns of the proposal over the last few weeks.
Negotiations come to a close after Ted Leonsis and D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser sign a $515 million deal that promises to modernize the Capital One Arena and the surrounding area. This happened after the legislation was blocked from having a hearing in the Senate Budget Committee, ending the discussion of moving the Caps and Wizards out of the nation's capital. This comes as good news to fans of both teams who think Bowser's actions are in their best interests.
I've honestly felt that Bowser's done a good thing and keeping the teams here, even though I don't watch basketball. I think she's done a better job at it to keep them here than they have trying to receive them.
After months of back and forth, the plan to move Capital One Arena to Alexandria will not go through. Experts from across Alexandria and DC are weighing in about how the outcome of this situation affects both of the cities.
Some in Alexandria are now expressing their disappointment over the loss of this deal that would have made Potomac Yard the central point for both teams. While the governor wanted the move to Virginia, some legislators felt that the deal was rushed and did not want taxpayers picking up the burden. Mayor Justin Wilson is now left to pick up the pieces.
We are disappointed that this proposal was not able to be thoughtfully considered on its merits by legislators, stakeholders, and ultimately now by our community, and instead got caught up in partisan warfare in Richmond. As a result, the city of Alexandria will no longer be considering the current proposal and will instead turn our focus to other efforts to bring quality commercial opportunities to the community in the future.
The construction site where the stadium would have been still remains, and the privately owned land is still under lease for 20 years. John Brault, a vice president at the National Consumers League, is curious about what will happen in future plans.
A lot of people are spreading blame and suggesting, and by some people I mean specifically Mayor Wilson in Alexandria, but also the developer, JBG Smith. They're suggesting that the Potomac Yard will just stay as a strip mall with acres of surface parking for 20 years. And I think that's really just sour grapes speaking.
Throughout the months of this proposal, many DC residents were against the move to Virginia. Ronald Moten with Don't Mute DC, an advocacy group, spoke extensively on how the Alexandria proposal had harmful consequences.
For leadership to be so selfish, right? When people are telling you this is going to kill us, it's going to kill small businesses, it's going to kill people trying to go to the airport and make their flights on time, right? It has so many residual effects, right, that people are not thinking about.
Moten says Leonsis and those in favor of the move were acting on self-interest instead of the hopes of DC residents.
He's not listening to the people. When you have so much money, you become a narcissist, and nobody can tell you nothing. You don't hear what's going on.
Similar debates on moving teams have become common in the world of sports arena ownership. Professor Dennis Coach specializes in the study of stadiums and arenas and the impact on the local economy. He says the grassroots efforts to stop the move to Alexandria played a big part in keeping the team in town.
Had the team not taken it, they would have come back and asked for more eventually, either later this year or next year or in 5 years. But they would have been back saying, hey, we're going to give you all of these goodies if you just subsidize us.
All right.
With the end of the Alexandria deal, the Wizards and Capitals will stay in D.C. until 2050. Meanwhile, fans of both teams hope to move past the troubles of these past months and focus on winning. Reporting in D.C. for VCU InSight and the newsroom at VCU, I'm Matt Bowman.
I worked with CNS digital reporter Olivia DeLeo on the story. She's here with more on how this isn't the first time an arena or stadium deal has failed in Virginia. Olivia?
No, in 1992, then Governor Douglas Wilder tried moving the NFL team, the Washington Redskins, now called the Commanders, to Potomac Yard, Alexandria. With the Capital One Arena move fail, Virginia remains one of at least 20 states without a major league sports team.
Thanks, Olivia.
In late March, Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin vetoed legislation aimed at establishing regulations for Virginia's adult-use marijuana market. VCU InSight reporter Mark Jones reports on the reaction this is having throughout the marijuana industry and the Commonwealth.
Marijuana businesses like Chester Cannabis Company grow hemp and CBD products for their consumers in the state of Virginia. The owners, Griffin Moon and David Bedard, expressed their reasons for starting this business and the impact this legislation could have on their products.
The market's very young here in Virginia, and there's not a lot of companies doing what we did with the cultivation and the product side of things. So we kind of wanted to get a jump start before full legalization comes around. And there's a lot of big money, big players coming in.
But their hopes for a cannabis market industry were no more after the latest news from the governor's office. In 2021, Virginia became the first southern state to pass a law permitting adults 21 and older to possess and grow small amounts of cannabis. Currently, to legally purchase cannabis products in the Commonwealth, a certified approval is necessary, and buyers can purchase up to 4 ounces every 30 days. With Democrats regaining control of the House in the last election, pro-legalization activists became optimistic that a retail marijuana market bill would reach the end of the legislative process this session. Despite the hope of many activists and a 4-page statement by Governor Youngkin, he expresses fear that approving the bill would increase the exposure of narcotics within the state and further harm public health and safety. Chelsea Higgs-Wise, who is the director of Marijuana Justice, a nonprofit organization aiming to educate Americans on the history of cannabis criminalization, disagrees with the governor.
So what we've seen with all drugs, particularly, is that if we do not legalize the drugs or create a healthy access, there will be unhealthy products that continue to grow on the market. And again, that's not just with marijuana. That's with fentanyl. That's with other drugs as well, which is why we really have to look at decriminalization overall, because that is what's continuing to increase the market of really bad and synthetic drugs.
A lawyer representing the Virginia Cannabis Association, Greg Habib, says there is support on both sides for a regulated marijuana market.
Then there's the political question. Every year is an election year in Virginia. More and more the polls show that this is a bipartisan issue. Nobody wants a system where unlicensed drug dealers sell untested, untaxed products. And so I think there's going to be some political consequences as more and more people come around to the idea that we need to regulate this market.
For the owners of the Chester Cannabis Company, they claim the constant changing of marijuana laws in the state create frustration among the industry.
It's hard to kind of, set up a business if you can only think a year or a couple of years in advance instead of, 5-10 years down the line. It's hard to think of the future if you don't know what the next year is even going to look like for what you can and can't sell.
According to a statewide poll conducted by the Wason Center for Civic Leadership at Christopher Newport University, 60% of Virginians support allowing the retail sale of recreational marijuana in Virginia. Reporting for VCU InSight in the newsroom at VCU, I'm Mark Jones.
CNS digital reporter Michael Chun worked on the article portion of this story.
He looked into how many states have set up an adult cannabis retail market. Michael, can you tell us more?
Yeah, for sure. So 24 states have a recreational legal cannabis market, according to Pew Research Center. And many states also have a medical cannabis market. Last year, retail cannabis generated over $2.9 billion nationwide in excise taxes, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. Many states put that money towards schools, public safety and health, and infrastructures.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Michael. We're in the middle of Richmond Restaurant Week, and this semester, CNS digital reporters looked into how Richmond suburbs are competing with the city's nationally ranked culinary scene.
Since the beginning of coronavirus pandemic, the restaurant industry experienced significant changes in technology and operations. Owners now reconsider their locations in the face of rising costs and evolving consumer choices. Roby Martin is a longtime local food writer and podcast host covering Richmond's food scene and other areas of Virginia. Martin listed Michael Lindsay's Lindsay Food Group as an example of an urban owner moving to the suburban markets.
I think he's probably the largest Black-owned restaurant group on the East Coast, and he's pushing some wonderful stuff out into, wonderful restaurants out into those areas that don't often see local ownership.
Statewide average hourly earnings for hospitality employees went up to $18.93 last year. Employment numbers are trending back up to pre-pandemic levels, reaching over $294,000 in February of this year. According to Martin, the experience is what dining out is all about, regardless of location.
But it's never about the food. I mean, it's about the food, but it's never, ever about the food. It is always about the companion, it's always about the service, and it's always about what the memory is.
Longtime restaurant industry workers all say more frequent diners and tips are also starting to return.
Want to learn more about the stories we just told you about?
Check out the newsroom at VCU website, vcucns.com. You can check out the multimedia articles by the CNS and InSight reporters.
This is the last show for the spring semester. VCU InSight will return next fall, and we hope to see you then.
It has been our pleasure to bring you this newscast all semester. On behalf of everyone at VCU InSight, CNS, and the newsroom at VCU, thank you for watching. I'm Matt Bowman.
And I'm Carly Woodcock. Thank you.